California's gas crisis was never meant to reach Arizona. There was no announcement, no warning, no vote. Yet almost overnight, it crossed state lines and landed squarely in the lives of millions of people who had nothing to do with the decisions that caused it. Drivers in Arizona woke up to prices that didn't make sense. Stations that usually competed on price suddenly moved in lockstep. Some pumps ran dry. Others posted handwritten signs apologizing for the inconvenience. It didn't feel like a normal price hike. It felt like something breaking. This wasn't triggered by war. It wasn't caused by sanctions. There was no hurricane, no cyber attack, no global shock event. This was a man-made crisis built quietly over decades. And to understand what really happened, you have to start with a fact that almost no one talks about. Arizona does not control its gasoline. Nearly 90% of the fuel used in Arizona comes from California, not Texas, not Oklahoma, not the massive refining hubs along the Gulf Coast. California. That dependency is invisible when things work. But when they don't, it becomes unavoidable. California gasoline is not like gasoline everywhere else. It uses a specialized formulation designed to reduce smog and emissions. Cleaner fuel, stricter standards, fewer pollutants. But that cleaner fuel comes at a cost. Only a limited number of refineries in the entire country can produce it, and most of them are located in California. That means California is effectively an energy island, and Arizona is tied to that island by pipelines it cannot easily replace. When California's system is stable, Arizona benefits from proximity and supply. When California's system tightens, Arizona absorbs the shock. In early 2025, several California refineries quietly reduced output. There was no single headline event, no dramatic shutdown announcement. Instead, it was a series of overlapping disruptions. One refinery entered extended maintenance. Another slowed production to meet updated environmental compliance requirements. A third experienced operational issues it declined to detail publicly. On paper, each reduction seemed manageable. In reality, they stacked. Fuel inventories were already low, demand was rising as seasonal travel approached, and the margin for error had disappeared. California's fuel system runs lean by design. There is little excess capacity, little redundancy, little flexibility. That efficiency keeps costs down during normal times, but it also means there is no cushion when things go wrong. As refinery output dipped, wholesale prices rose. Distributors began prioritizing contracts. Spot market availability tightened. Arizona felt it almost immediately. Fuel shipments slowed through the pipelines. Storage terminals began drawing down reserves. Stations noticed delays, then shortages. At first, prices crept up quietly. A few cents here, a few cents there. Then the increases accelerated. Within days, drivers were paying significantly more, not just in Phoenix, but across the state. Some areas were hit harder than others. Rural communities with fewer suppliers saw sharper spikes. Urban centers experienced shortages at high-volume stations, and still, no official emergency was declared, because technically, fuel was still flowing, just not enough. For everyday people, the impact was immediate and personal. A warehouse worker commuting 40 miles each way suddenly found fuel costs consuming a dangerous share of their paycheck. A rideshare driver began rejecting longer trips. A small landscaping business quietly reduced its service area. Gasoline is not discretionary spending. It is structural. People don't stop needing fuel because prices rise. They adapt by cutting elsewhere. Groceries, savings, medical appointments, education. Every dollar spent at the pump is a dollar not spent somewhere else. And when fuel prices spike, inflation doesn't just tick upward, it spreads. Transportation costs rise first, then food prices, then services. Fuel is embedded in almost everything. And yet the official explanations stayed vague. This is a temporary disruption. Market dynamics are adjusting. Supply will normalize soon. But temporary problems don't reveal long-standing vulnerabilities. This one did, because the real issue wasn't refinery maintenance, it wasn't environmental regulation alone, and it wasn't sudden demand. It was dependence without backup. Arizona has almost no refining capacity of its own. It has limited pipeline connections to alternative supply regions. It cannot quickly import compatible fuel from elsewhere. This wasn't an accident. For decades, it was cheaper to rely on California than to build redundant infrastructure. Why invest billions in refineries and pipelines when supply was reliable? Why prepare for failure when efficiency worked? This logic made sense, until it didn't. Energy experts had warned about this exact scenario for years. Studies pointed out that California's refinery network was shrinking, facilities were aging, compliance costs were rising, profit margins were narrowing. Several refineries shut down permanently, others converted to renewable fuel production. Very few new facilities were built. Each closure reduced capacity, each conversion tightened supply. Each year made the system more fragile. But as long as prices stayed stable, warnings were easy to ignore. Because political attention follows crises, not forecasts. When prices surged in Arizona, speculation followed quickly. Were oil companies manipulating supply? Were refineries withholding fuel to drive prices higher? Were regulators slow to approve emergency measures? These questions are difficult to answer definitively. Refinery operations are complex and opaque. Inventory data is delayed. Market behavior can be explained or justified in multiple ways. But what is clear is this: when supply is tight and demand is inflexible, prices rise fast. Gasoline demand is among the least flexible in the economy. People still need to commute. Trucks still need to deliver food. Emergency services still need fuel. There is no switch to flip. This reality gives enormous power to those who control supply, whether intentionally or not. California regulators insisted there was no price manipulation. Oil companies denied wrongdoing, but trust erodes when transparency is limited, and the public bore the cost first. Politically, the crisis created tension that few leaders wanted to address openly. Arizona lawmakers began questioning why their state was so dependent on California's fuel system. California officials defended environmental standards and denied responsibility for out-of-state impacts. Federal authorities stayed largely silent. No one wanted to say the quiet part out loud, because acknowledging the problem would force difficult conversations. Should Arizona invest in alternative pipelines connecting to Texas or the Midwest? Should California maintain additional reserve capacity? Should fuel standards be temporarily relaxed during shortages? Each option carries political risk. Environmental groups oppose weakening standards. Taxpayers resist funding large infrastructure projects. Corporations push back against regulations that reduce profit. So instead of structural change, the system absorbed the shock. Consumers paid more. Businesses adjusted. Life went on. But something important had shifted, because once a system reveals its fragility, confidence doesn't fully return. This crisis exposed a deeper issue about how modern economies function. We live in a world of deeply interconnected systems governed by fragmented decision-making. California designs energy policy for California. Arizona designs policy for Arizona, but fuel flows don't stop at borders. Neither do consequences. Energy transitions are accelerating everywhere. Cleaner fuels, lower emissions, reduced reliance on fossil fuels. These goals are necessary, but transitions that prioritize speed over resilience create new risks. When systems are optimized for efficiency alone, they lose shock absorbers. There is no redundancy, no buffer, no margin for error. One disruption cascades into many. That's exactly what happened here. A refinery slowdown became a price spike. A compliance adjustment became a regional shortage. A local policy became a cross-state crisis. Not because anyone planned it, but because no one planned for failure. The mystery isn't who caused the crisis. It's why the system was allowed to be this brittle. This wasn't the first warning sign. California has experienced price spikes during refinery outages before. Each time, the explanation was similar: temporary. Unusual, unlikely to repeat. But repetition turns anomalies into patterns, and patterns reveal design flaws. As weeks passed, prices in Arizona began to stabilize, but not to previous levels. Some of the increase remained. This is another quiet truth of fuel crises. Prices rise quickly, they fall slowly. The damage lingers long after headlines fade. For many households, the impact was permanent. Savings were drained, debt increased, choices narrowed, and when stability returned, attention moved on. But the vulnerability didn't disappear, because nothing fundamental changed. California's refinery capacity continues to decline. Arizona's dependency remains. Demand continues to grow. Population growth, urban sprawl, and logistics expansion all require fuel. The next disruption may not be maintenance. It could be wildfire, earthquake, extreme heat. California is vulnerable to all three. Climate volatility increases operational risk for refineries, pipelines, and power systems. Each risk compounds the next. This crisis was not caused by a single decision or actor. It was the cumulative result of layered choices made over decades. Choices that favored short-term efficiency over long-term resilience. Local optimization over regional stability. Cost savings over redundancy. And when systems built this way fail, they don't fail dramatically. They crack quietly. Prices rise, supplies tighten, explanations lag. By the time the public notices, options are limited. This is why energy security is not just a technical issue. It's a governance issue. Who plans for failure? Who pays when it happens? Who decides what level of risk is acceptable? In this case, no one clearly did. And when accountability is spread thin, responsibility disappears. The gas pump was simply where the problem became visible. The real crisis lived underground, in pipelines, regulations, market structures, and assumptions no one questioned. This was not a warning shot. It was a stress test, and the system barely passed. Next time, it may not. Because energy transitions are accelerating. Infrastructure is aging. Climate risks are increasing. More disruptions are coming. The question is not whether another fuel crisis will happen. The question is where it will begin, and who will be caught unprepared. Arizona learned a difficult lesson. Dependence feels invisible until it becomes expensive. And by the time the cost is clear, the options are already limited. The crisis didn't end when prices stabilized. It simply faded from view. And that may be the most dangerous part of all.